that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true, but now...
Welcome back, people. Hey, how are you guys doing? Huh? I hope you're doing better than I am. I have had this nasty cold for several days now, and my throat hurts. I've got a little fever going on, but I'm still here. I'm still here because I love you. I love you. And I wanted to help you guys out. So I came through. Now I want you to please excuse my voice today. It's real nasally. And I have, like crud. And I'm coughing. In fact, I'm bad today. So, all that aside, now that you've heard the spiel, so here's what we got. How many of you are ready for a civil war? How many of you are ready for a revolution, an armed insurrection against our evil, oppressive government, huh? A lot of you, actually, a lot of you, and a lot of us. I'm ready. I'm not saying I'm going to start it. I'm not saying I want it to happen. I don't want civil war. I'm not ready for a civil war. In terms, I'm not ready for it to occur. But if it were to happen, I'd be ready for it to happen. And you should too. You should be prepared because it could be coming. But here, so this is what I want to tell you about this. This is what I want you to think about. Because I see a lot of people on Facebook talking about, one side says, hey, why do you think that a bunch of guys with AR-15s could take on the U.S. government? And the other side says, hey, we have all the guns, and the other side doesn't have all the guns, so we're going to win this easily, right? So both sides think that it's going to be an easy win for their side, right? That's what they think. And it sounds reasonable to both sides. I mean, from both perspectives, it sounds like, yeah, our side, our side has the military, so they're going to win, and our side has all the guns, so we're going to win. That's not how that works. That's not how civil wars actually pan out. You see, the U.S. has never had a civil war. I mean, we've had something that is called the Civil War, but it wasn't a civil war. It was an invasion of a sovereign nation. But that's for a different video. There have been civil wars almost yearly around the world since the beginning of time. And one thing is constant with all of these conflicts is that none of them were fought in a vacuum. None of them. You see, anytime there's a civil conflict, there are things at stake that actually have an effect on other countries, right? Other places in the world have to deal with whatever happens in this civil war, which is why when, Zimbabwe gets into a conflict, the U.S. sends troops, right? When Colombia is in a conflict, the U.S. sends troops. When Castro wanted to take over Cuba, the U.S. helped him, right? Because it made sense to the U.S. to put Castro in charge. Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam was a civil war before we got involved, and it became a war full of just France and everybody else. I say we, France got involved first, but that's irrelevant. The point is, every single civil war is fought by the two sides within and countless sides from without. So all of these other countries always get involved in civil wars, anywhere from material to weapon support to, fuel, food, all that. That always happens in every civil war. So you have to wonder, okay, if a place like Libya is important to us in terms of sending troops, and not just us, but the whole world. The Europeans sent troops, and everybody else did, and Russia, everybody. So if a place that is small and irrelevant generally as Libya was that big of a deal for everybody else to get involved with, how do you think it's going to happen if we, the U.S., fall into a civil war? Do you think it's going to be a bunch of rednecks with guns against the government and a bunch of liberals? Do you really think that? Are you that myopic? Because that's what you are. You've clearly never read any history, and you have no geopolitical understanding. No, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be a bunch of other countries whose interests are at stake. I mean, think about it. U.S. has a lot of heavy investors, China being the biggest. I don't care what you people who don't understand the economy that think that we have some kind of trade deficit with China, you don't know anything about the economy. That trade deficit gets flipped around and is invested back into the U.S. China has an investment deficit with the U.S. So, and it matches the trade deficit with them. So that money comes back. It's coming back tenfold. Well, not tenfold. It's coming back at exactly the same amount. They're sending that money back to us and investing in the U.S. Now, if we go into civil war, that's going to be a big problem for China, who has invested a lot into us. Now, what side are they going to fall on? Well, I don't know. It's impossible to really think into the head of the Chi-Coms, because there's two influences. There are rational influences and there are communist influence. And communism is not rational, not by any stretch, nor is socialism. It's feel-good policy. It isn't about thinking things through. It's about, it's just not fair, so let's change it. That's what socialism and communism is. So that plays into it. But, the question is this, and I used to say, well, the Chinese would fall on the side of capitalism because they need our capitalism to keep going. They're thriving because of our capitalism. And that is true. And if we had any side who was about capitalism, that'd be the side that the Chinese would probably take because it would behoove them to do so. But we don't. We don't have anybody. The current administration is not a capitalist administration. It is a closed, controlled market administration. That is, they don't want us engaging in the free market. They want us engaging in a limited market, which is not good for China. But us becoming socialists and what that does to the world economy isn't good for China either. So in either case, I don't see China having a lot to win, although they'll have to make that decision and pick a side. And they will pick a side. And when they pick that side, the money, the tools, the food, the equipment is all going to start rolling in on behalf of that side. It's going to be one side against China, except that there will be other influences who are in competition with China who are going to want to supply the other side. So if you've got China supplying, let's say they decide to supply the socialists, then you've got other countries who are going to want to supply the capitalists because they have something to lose. So there's a lot more going into this than just, the rednecks with guns against the government and all that. It's way deeper and it's way more complicated. And this other thing you have to think about, and this is one of the things I keep trying to bring up, and people keep just, I don't want to hear it, because they've fallen into a certain belief, and that's all there is. They won't listen beyond that belief. And if it challenges it, even if they have two conflicting beliefs, they won't allow them to come together so they can make a decision between the two. They have two conflicting beliefs, and they're going to keep them separate, and they're going to conflict, and they don't care. So anyway, where I'm going with this is, let's say it is a socialist versus capitalist war, which is what it's feeling like it could end up being, or at least some incarnation of that. So let's say it's a socialist. All right, well, the North is decidedly socialist, right? The North of the U.S. Is decidedly socialist, and Canada is clearly socialist. So it's obvious, I think, that Canada is going to be very important to the socialists in terms of a land bridge for all the things that they need supply. So whoever outside of this continent is supplying is going to get help from Canada, because the socialists will need arms and food and supplies and all this. So they'll be pushing it in through the Canadian border without any problems at all, right? So there you go. Now, prior to this administration, it was pretty obvious that if it came down to this kind of war, the South would use the Mexican border to bring in all their goods and weapons and arms and all the things they'll need to fight the war, right? Just like the last time there was a civil war. A lot of that stuff came in through the Mexican border, down through Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, all the places where illegal immigrants are taken now. Illegal immigrants. So that's another argument too. But the point is, all the things that were used by the South in the Civil War the first time to transport goods and services and things they needed to survive and fight. Right now, the people in in the South are trying to close those channels, which you're building a wall around your only access point, people. I mean, really, that's very myopic. That's very short-sighted. You're not looking out into the future, okay? So maybe Donald Trump's not the guy to worry about, but the next guy will be. And if the next guy has control over that wall, guess what? You're gonna have to swim your guns in and put them on little homemade submarines and things like that. It's not so easy. It's a lot easier to drag them across the land than it is across the water. Trust me, it always works out that way. So we're in a place now where it's looking like it could very well be, and I could be wrong on this. I mean, I'm not wrong that other countries will get involved. That's not a question. If you question that, you're a moron, right? That it would be the first conflict in history where that wasn't the case, and it won't be. So the place we've put ourselves in now is where, if this happens, we are looking at a significant amount of support for the left, probably from Europe, possibly from China, maybe not. I don't know. The Chinese thing is still a variable because after Trump's gone, they may be our friends again, friends of capitalism, that is. So they may come back around, but Europe's probably going to fall on the socialist side. Russia is really most likely going to fall on the socialist side. So they're going to get a heavy amount of goods and guns and all the things they need to win the war in exchange for being cordial with those countries. And who are we going to have? Who's going to be on our side? You know, look, could, I don't know, 30 million Americans with AR-15s fight off the U.S. government? Probably. But they're not going to fight off the U.S. government with the help of Canada, Russia, England, France, Germany, Spain, blah, 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 all these socialist countries. They're not. That's not going to happen. We are just too overwhelmed. And they'll have a steady supply, and they'll have manufacturing, and they'll have, a passage to come and go. We won't. We won't have any of that. We'll be stuck. And I don't see any way to win at this point unless we change our ways. Unless, the conservatives absolutely fall back on traditional ideals instead of this neo-conservative thing that is senseless. I don't understand it, but whatever. You guys do your thing, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that you're tying your own noose. I don't get it. But anyway, I digress. So listen, I know I've pissed off some more of you. I told you weren't going to like me. I told you. Look, I am straight up honest with you. Not good, not bad. Honest. I'm just telling you how it is. You thought that you liked this guy because he tells you how it is. Well, then you should like me. It's just that I'm not telling you how it is in a way that you like, so you don't like me. That's fine. Whatever, man. Do your thing. I love you all. Thank you for watching. Keep tuned in so I can insult the rest of you.
You heard a while, but that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true.